The jungle was quiet, too quiet. Tall alien trees stood like dark towers, their leaves glowing faint green in the night. Strange flowers opened with a slow hiss, releasing blue mist that drifted low across the ground. Kayla moved carefully between them, her silver eyes scanning the shadows. In her hands, she held a small scanner, its soft beeping the only sound she allowed herself to hear. She was looking for something rare, a crystal buried deep under the jungle floor. Her people needed it for their energy systems, and she had volunteered for the mission. But she didn't know the danger waiting ahead. She didn't know the trap was not for just anyone. It was meant for her. Far behind her, moving silently, was Ethan. A human soldier, broad-shouldered, wearing dark armor that blended with the shadows. He had been ordered to protect Kayla without her knowledge. Humans and her people were uneasy allies. But Ethan had seen the report. Someone wanted Kayla captured alive, and in this jungle, that could only mean trouble. Kayla stopped and crouched. Touching the soil, her scanner lit up, showing a spike in energy readings. She smiled slightly, thinking she was close, but Ethan, still hidden, saw something else. A thin wire stretched between two trees, almost invisible. He froze, his eyes following the wire to a device half buried in the ground. A hunter's trap, and not just any trap. This one was built to kill or disable instantly. Kayla took a step forward. Unaware, Ethan's heartbeat quickened. He could shout, but that would alert the enemy. He could wait, but that would mean watching her walk right into it. He didn't think twice. He broke into a sprint. His boots hitting the ground without a sound. Kayla heard something, a rush of movement, and turned just in time to see him. A human, charging straight at her. What she began, but before she could finish, Ethan slammed into her, pushing her out of the way. The trap triggered. Metal spikes shot forward with deadly speed. Ethan twisted his body, putting himself between Kayla and the danger. The spikes tore into his side, the sound sharp and sickening. Kayla gasped as he staggered, his face tightening in pain. Blood, dark in the dim light, spread across his armor. "Stay down," he growled, his voice strained but firm. Kayla stared at him, confused. She had never seen this man before, yet he had just taken the hit meant for her. She opened her mouth to speak, but then she heard it movement in the trees. Dark shapes, silent and quick, closing in from all sides. The hunters, they were coming for her. And now for him too. Ethan grabbed her arm, pulling her to her feet. "Run," he ordered. She hesitated, still stunned. "Run," he repeated, louder, his voice carrying urgency. This time she obeyed, her legs moving fast over the uneven ground. The jungle seemed to close in around them, vines catching at their clothes. The air grew thick with the smell of damp earth and the sound of pursuit, footsteps, many of them, getting closer. Kayla looked at him as they ran. His face was pale, his breathing heavy. She could see the blood, could see he was hurt badly. Yet he kept moving, his eyes scanning for a path. They jumped over fallen logs, slid down muddy slopes, and wove between massive roots behind them. The hunters hissed in their own language, a sound that made Kayla's skin crawl. They reached a thick cluster of giant roots. Ethan pulled her down, pressing a finger to his lips. They crouched in silence, the only sound the pounding of their hearts. The hunter's footsteps stopped. Kayla held her breath. Shadows passed just beyond the roots, close enough for her to see the sharp edges of their weapons. One of them paused, sniffing the air. Ethan's hand tightened on his rifle, but he didn't move. After a tense moment, the hunters moved on, their footsteps fading into the distance. Kayla finally exhaled. She turned to look at Ethan. "You're bleeding," she whispered. He shrugged, though she could see the pain in his eyes. "It's nothing," he said, but his voice was weaker now. Kella's mind was spinning. Who was this human, and why would he throw himself into danger for her? She didn't know it yet, but this night was only the beginning. The jungle had gone silent again, but the danger had not passed. Ethan's breathing was heavy, his steps uneven. Kayla could see the way his hand pressed hard against his side. Trying to slow the bleeding, the smell of blood mixed with the damp jungle air. She wanted to stop, to help him, but the sound of the hunters moving behind them kept her running. They were close, too close. Every crack of a branch, every rustle in the leaves made Kella's heart beat faster. Ethan's eyes scanned ahead, looking for somewhere to hide. He spotted a gap between two moss-covered boulders without speaking. He grabbed Kella's arm and pulled her inside. They crouched low in the dark space, their backs pressed against the cold stone. Kayla could hear Ethan's ragged breathing. His armor was wet with blood, the dark stain growing larger with each passing second. "You need medical help," she whispered. Ethan shook his head slowly. "No time." "They'll find us if we stop," he said, his voice hoarse. Kayla frowned, frustration in her eyes. "You saved me." "Why?" "We barely know each other," she asked. Ethan gave a weak smile. "Doesn't matter." "You were in danger before." Kayla could respond. The sound of footsteps grew louder. The hunters were sweeping the area, their voices low and sharp. Ethan motioned for her to stay silent. One of the hunters passed close enough for Kayla to see the reflection of moonlight on his armor. Her breath caught in her throat. The hunter paused, scanning the ground, then moved on. Kayla exhaled slowly, relief washing over her. Ethan waited until the sounds faded before speaking. "We can't outrun them. We have to outsmart them." Kayla nodded. She had grown up in this jungle. She knew its hidden paths. "Follow me." "I know a way," she said. Ethan gave a small nod, and they moved out from the hiding place. The path Kayla led him down was narrow, winding between towering roots and hanging vines. Strange glowing insects floated through the air, casting soft light over their faces. Ethan's steps grew slower, his strength fading. Kayla glanced back at him often, worry tightening her chest, but she kept moving. Stopping now would mean death for both of them. Behind them, the hunters realized their prey had slipped away. The sound of their pursuit grew louder. They were faster now, the jungle alive with the noise of their chase. Ethan's hand gripped his rifle tightly. He glanced at Kayla. "If they catch us, don't let them take you alive," he said quietly. Kayla didn't answer, but the look in her eyes said she understood. They reached a steep slope covered in slick moss. Kayla slid down quickly, landing in a shallow stream below. Ethan followed. Wincing in pain as he landed, cold water splashed up, soaking them both. Kayla looked around, her eyes locking on a dark opening in the rock. "There," she said, pointing. They waded through the water and slipped into the narrow cave. Inside, the air was cooler, the sound of the outside world muffled. Kayla helped Ethan sit down against the wall. His breathing was rough, his face pale. She knelt beside him, pulling a small pouch from her belt. Inside were healing herbs used by her people. She crushed them between her fingers, releasing a bitter scent. "This might work." "I'm not sure if it's safe for humans," she warned. Ethan smirked weakly. "Better than bleeding out," he said. She pressed the mixture into the wound. Ethan gritted his teeth, a low groan escaping him. Kayla worked quickly, wrapping the wound with strips of fabric torn from her cloak. When she finished, she sat back, her hands stained dark. For a moment, they were both silent, listening to the faint sound of water dripping in the cave. Kayla's mind was full of questions. Why would a human risk himself for her? She had always been told that humans were cold, calculating. But Ethan's actions didn't match those stories. He had thrown himself into danger without hesitation. It was something she couldn't understand, but she felt a strange warmth in her chest when she looked at him. Suddenly, a noise outside broke the quiet. A soft splash in the stream followed. By slow footsteps, Ethan's hand moved to his rifle. Kayla froze, her ears straining to listen. The footsteps stopped just outside the cave. A shadow fell across the entrance. Ethan glanced at Kayla. His eyes sharp, despite his injury. The hunters had found them. The shadow outside the cave did not move. Kayla's heart pounded in her chest. She held her breath, hoping the hunter would pass. Ethan's grip on his rifle tightened, his finger hovering near the trigger. Then, slowly, the shadow shifted. A faint metallic click echoed through the air, the sound of a weapon being prepared. Kayla's eyes widened. "They know we're here," she whispered. Ethan didn't reply. He glanced at the narrow rocks near the entrance. If the hunter stepped inside, there would be no room to dodge. Only one of them would leave alive. The footsteps came closer. Kayla could see the faint glow of alien armor in the darkness. Her mind raced. If Ethan fired, the sound would draw the others. If he didn't, they would be trapped. In a sudden burst, Ethan moved. He pushed Kayla deeper into the shadows and raised his rifle. A single muffled shot rang out. The hunter dropped with a heavy thud. Kayla flinched at the sound. Ethan stepped forward, dragging the body inside the cave. He searched quickly, finding a small pouch of supplies. Then he turned back to Kayla. "They'll notice he's missing soon." "We have to move," Kayla hesitated. "You're hurt." "You can't keep running like this," she said. Ethan gave her a firm look. "I don't have a choice." "And neither do you." She clenched her jaw, feeling a mix of anger and confusion. This human had no obligation to her. Yet here he was, bleeding and still protecting her. It made no sense. She had never asked for his help. She didn't want to owe him anything. They left the cave, moving along the stream. The water masked their footprints. Above them, the jungle canopy swayed in the wind. The night was alive with strange animal calls. Kayla led the way, taking hidden paths only her people knew. Ethan followed closely, though his steps were slower now, every so often. She glanced back to make sure he was still with her. Each time she saw the same determined look in his eyes. Hours seemed to pass before they stopped. Kayla chose a spot, surrounded by thick ferns and tangled roots. It was well hidden, safe for the moment. She knelt beside Ethan and checked the wound. The herbal paste had slowed the bleeding, but the damage was still bad. His armor was dented and torn where the spikes had hit. Kayla tore more fabric from her cloak and changed the bandage. Ethan stayed silent, watching her work. Finally, Kayla broke the silence. "Why? Why do this for me? You don't even know me," she asked quietly. Ethan's lips curved into a tired smile. "You're under my protection." "That's enough," he replied. Kayla frowned. "That's not an answer." "My people and yours barely trust each other." Ethan's gaze met hers. "Doesn't matter. You were in danger, and I could do something about it." His words confused her more. He spoke as if risking his life was nothing. Kayla leaned back, wrapping her arms around her knees. Where she came from, trust was earned slowly. Sacrifice was given only for family or close allies. This human's actions went against everything she understood, and yet she felt a strange pull toward him. Not friendship, not yet. But something deeper, a respect she didn't expect to feel. The faint sound of voices drifted through the trees. Kayla tensed. "They're still searching," she said. Ethan reached for his rifle. "How many?" She listened carefully. 3, maybe 4. "They're spreading out," Ethan nodded. "Then we move before they close in." They rose and slipped through the ferns. Kayla guided them toward a ridge that overlooked the river from here. She could see the silver shimmer of the water under the moonlight. "It's risky, but if we cross, we might lose them, she said. Ethan studied the terrain. His eyes narrowed at the fast-moving current. It'll be cold. And loud. Perfect cover. As they prepared to descend, Kayla felt the weight of unspoken words. She still didn't want to admit she owed him her life. But deep down, she knew she did. This was a debt she had not asked for, and one she didn't know how to repay. They began their slow climb down the ridge. Leaves crunched under their boots. The sound seemed louder than it should. Kayla's sharp hearing caught another noise. Movement above them. She looked up to see dark figures stepping into view. The hunters had found them again, and this time there was no easy escape. Asterisk, the moonlight spilled over the cliff, turning the river below into a ribbon of silver. Kayla studied the narrow path that wound down toward the water. It was steep and crumbling, the kind of trail where one wrong step meant a fall into the rocks. Ethan stood beside her, his breathing still rough from the wound. "You sure about this?" he asked. Kayla nodded. "It's the only way. The hunters won't expect us to take the dangerous route." They began their descent. Loose stones rolled under their boots, bouncing into the darkness below. The roar of the river grew louder with every step. Kayla moved first, testing each foothold. Ethan followed carefully, his hand brushing the rock wall for balance. The air was cold here, carrying the sharp scent of wet stone far above. The jungle seemed to watch them silently. Halfway down, Kayla stopped. Something didn't feel right. Her people had a saying, "The jungle speaks if you listen." And right now, it was whispering danger. She scanned the shadows along the path. At first, she saw nothing. Then her eyes caught it, a faint line stretched across the trail, almost invisible, a tripwire, and beyond it, hidden between the rocks, a cluster of sharp metal spikes. Her heart pounded. This was no ordinary trap. It had been set recently, the metal still clean. Ethan noticed her frozen stance. "What is it?" She pointed silently to the wire. His eyes narrowed. "They're ahead of us. They know we're coming this way." Kayla crouched to study the trap. It was clever, too high to step over easily, too low to duck under without touching, if triggered. The spikes would swing out with enough force to kill. Ethan moved closer. Wincing as his wound protested, he examined the mechanism. "It's meant to funnel us into one spot. Where they'll be waiting," he murmured. Kayla's instincts screamed at her to turn back, but she knew they couldn't climb up without risking an ambush from above. The hunters were closing in from somewhere. She could feel it in the air. "What do we do?" she asked. Ethan gave her a faint smile. "We break the trap before it breaks us." He knelt, pulling a small tool from his belt. Kayla kept watch, her eyes scanning the cliff above. Shadows moved there. She was certain of it. There. "Here," she whispered urgently. Ethan's hands worked faster. The sound of metal clicking filled the air. Then, with a soft snap, the wire loosened. Ethan kicked the spikes aside, sending them clattering down the cliff. The noise echoed, and in that moment, the hunters revealed themselves. 3 figures stepped from the shadows above. Their armor gleamed under the moonlight, weapons raised. Kayla's pulse raced. Ethan raised his rifle, firing a short burst. One hunter fell, the others scattering to avoid the shots. Kayla pulled her own weapon, a curved blade that shimmered in the dim light. She moved forward with a fluid grace, blocking a strike from the nearest attacker. Their blades clashed, sparks flying in the dark. Ethan fought the second hunter, using the narrow path to his advantage. Each move cost him strength, but he didn't slow. Kayla ducked under a swing, slashing her opponent's leg. The hunter staggered, and with a swift kick, she sent him tumbling down the cliff. The third hunter hesitated, glancing between them. Then he turned and fled into the shadows. Kayla let him go for now. Survival was more important than revenge. Breathing hard, Kayla looked at Ethan. "You shouldn't have fought with that injury," she said. Ethan gave her a tired grin. "And leave you to deal with them alone." "Not happening." She shook her head. "Humans. You're impossible, and you're welcome," he replied. They continued down the path, reaching the edge of the river. The water rushed past, cold and fast. Kayla hesitated only a moment. Before stepping in, Ethan followed. The current tugging at their legs, the icy water numbed his wound, making him stumble. Kayla caught his arm, steadying him. They crossed together. The roar of the river masking all other sounds. On the far bank, they climbed onto the rocks. Dripping and breathless, Kayla glanced back toward the cliff. She knew the hunters would not stop. If anything, the failed trap would only make them more determined. But something inside her had shifted. Ethan wasn't just her unwanted protector anymore. He was part of her fight to survive, and whether she liked it or not, they were in this together. The night air was cold against their wet clothes. Ethan's armor dripped steadily, each drop lost in the roar of the river behind them. Kayla scanned the tree line on the far bank. The jungle here was different. The trees taller, their roots rising like twisted pillars. The shadows between them were deep. Too deep. She didn't trust the quiet. Ethan leaned on his rifle for balance. His wound throbbed with every movement. Kayla could see the strain in his eyes, yet he kept glancing toward the water. "They'll cross," he said, his voice low. "They won't give up." Kayla nodded. "They're hunters. They never stop until the target is taken." They moved along the rocky edge of the river. The path curved inward to a small clearing surrounded by thick roots and boulders. It was a natural choke point. Ethan stopped there, scanning the terrain. "This is where we hold them," he said. Kayla frowned. "You can't fight in your condition." He gave her a half smile. "I can. Just not for long." Kayla sighed. She hated to admit it, but he was right. Running again would only make them easier to track. If they made a stand here, they might drive the hunters back. She drew her blade, the curved metal gleaming faintly in the moonlight. Ethan checked his rifle, loading his last full magazine. No words were needed. They both knew what was coming. The first sign was a faint splash from the river. Then came the rustle of branches on the other side. Shadows moved among the trees. Kayla's grip on her blade tightened. Ethan raised his rifle and aimed toward the dark shapes. "They're here," he whispered. The hunters emerged one by one, their armor glistening with river water. They moved like predators, spreading out to surround the clearing. Kayla took a step closer to Ethan. She could hear their low voices in their own language. It was the sound of confidence. They thought this would be easy. Ethan fired first. A burst of sharp cracks shattered the night. One hunter fell instantly, his body hitting the rocks. The others charged forward. Kayla met the first with a swift slash, their weapons clashing in a burst of sparks. She moved fast, ducking under. A strike and cutting across the hunter's side. He staggered, but another replaced him instantly. Ethan's rifle barked again. A second hunter dropped. But Ethan stumbled as his wound flared. Kayla blocked a blow aimed at him. Spinning to drive her blade into her attacker's chest, blood hissed against the cool air. The hunter collapsed. But Kayla didn't have time to rest. Two more came from the left. Ethan switched to his sidearm, firing in short, controlled bursts. The hunters fell back under the gunfire. But Kayla knew it wouldn't last. One of the hunters hurled a net toward Ethan. Kayla lunged forward, slicing it in midair before it could wrap around him. Ethan gave her a quick nod of thanks. She didn't answer. She was too busy stepping between him and the next attacker. Their blades rang in the darkness. The hunter was strong, but Kayla was faster. A final twist of her wrist sent his weapon flying. She ended the fight with a clean strike. Ethan's breathing was ragged now. The last hunter stood near the tree line. Watching, he didn't attack. Instead, he gave a slow, deliberate gesture, a promise they would meet again. Then he disappeared into the shadows. Kella's blade lowered. She knew he wasn't retreating out of fear. This was just one battle. In a longer hunt, Ethan leaned against a boulder, his hand pressed hard against his side. "You're bleeding more," Kayla said, moving toward him. He shook his head. "I'll be fine." For now, she didn't believe him, but she also knew arguing wouldn't change anything. They stood in the clearing, the river's roar filling the silence. Kayla looked at the human beside her. His face was pale, but his eyes were steady. He had fought when he could have fled, and once again, he had kept her alive. It was becoming harder for her to tell herself this was just coincidence. Maybe, she thought, humans weren't what she had been told. The jungle was quiet again. But the quiet no longer felt like safety. It felt like a warning. Kayla tightened her grip on her blade. The hunt wasn't over. It was only changing shape. The river's roar faded behind them as Kayla guided Ethan into the deeper jungle. The trees grew taller here, their trunks glowing faintly with veins of pale green light. Strange flowers swayed in the breeze, though there was no wind. The air smelled faintly of spice and metal. Ethan's steps were slow, every movement pulling. At the wound in his side, Kayla stayed close, her eyes sweeping the shadows. They had driven the hunters back, but she knew it wouldn't last. They reached the remains of an old outpost. The walls were broken, vines hanging down like curtains. A cracked metal roof reflected the light of the twin moons above. Inside, the air was cooler. Carrying the faint hum of long-dead machines, Kayla led Ethan to a bench made from a slab of stone. He lowered himself onto it with a quiet grunt. The pain was written in the lines of his face. She knelt beside him, pulling a pouch from her belt. "I have something stronger than herbs," she said. Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Stronger? How?" Kayla took out a small vial, filled with glowing blue liquid. "It's a healing compound. For my people," she explained, "it might work for you. Or it might kill you." Ethan chuckled faintly. Not much of a sales pitch. Kayla frowned. "It's all we have." He met her gaze and gave a small nod. "Do it." Kayla uncorked the vial and poured the liquid into a cloth. She pressed it to his wound. Ethan hissed sharply, gripping the edge of the bench. The glow spread through the torn armor and into the injury. For a moment, Kayla thought his breathing would stop. Then, slowly, the bleeding slowed. The angry red of the wound began to fade to pale pink. Ethan leaned back, his chest rising and falling in steadier rhythm. "You humans," Kayla said softly. "You take risks without thinking." Ethan opened one eye and smirked. "Says the one traveling through a jungle full of people trying to kill her." Kayla's lips twitched in something almost like a smile. "That's different," she replied. "Not really," he said. They sat in silence for a while. Through the gaps in the roof, Kayla could see the alien skies above. 2 moons hung low, bathing the jungle in silver light. Stars clustered in strange patterns. Some blinked in colors not found in her world's sky. Ethan followed her gaze. "Never seen anything like it," he murmured. Kayla tilted her head. "This is your first time on my world, isn't it?" "Yeah. And I wasn't exactly invited," he said with a faint grin. She studied him quietly. He was still pale. But the strength in his eyes had returned. For someone who had nearly died twice in one night, he carried himself with calm resolve. She couldn't decide if it was bravery or madness. Maybe both. "I still don't understand." Kayla said finally, "Why risk yourself for me? I'm not your commander, not your friend, not even from your world." Ethan shrugged. "You were in danger, and I could help." "That's enough for me." Kayla shook her head. "That's not how my people think." "Maybe that's why your people don't trust mine," he replied. Outside, a branch snapped. Kayla's head turned instantly. The jungle's quiet had returned, but now it felt heavy. She rose silently, moving toward the doorway. Ethan followed, his rifle ready. From the shadows beyond the vines, faint green lights blinked in a slow pattern. Kella's pulse quickened. "That's a signal." "They've found us," she whispered. Ethan checked his weapon. "How many?" "Enough to finish what they started," she said grimly. The hum of the jungle seemed to grow louder. Somewhere in the darkness, a hunter's voice called out in their sharp, cutting language. It was not a warning, it was a promise. Kayla turned back to Ethan. "They won't stop until one of us is dead." Ethan gave a short nod. "Then we make sure it's not us." Her eyes narrowed. "You have a plan?" A faint smile touched his lips. "Yeah, we give them a trap of our own." The broken outpost was silent, except for the faint hum of distant insects. Kayla moved quickly, her hands running over the remains of the old equipment. Metal panels, loose wiring, fragments of energy cells, all scattered under layers of dust. Ethan watched her work while keeping his rifle trained on the entrance. "They'll be here soon," he said quietly. Kayla nodded without looking up. "That's why we have to be ready before they arrive." Her fingers found a cracked generator hidden beneath a collapsed beam. It was old, but parts of it still glowed faintly. She pulled out a set of small tools from her belt and began stripping wires. Ethan limped over to help. His movements were slow, but precise, between them. They began linking the wires to an old proximity sensor. "What exactly are we building?" he asked. "A welcome gift." Kayla replied with a hint of grim humor. The plan was simple and deadly. If the hunters crossed the threshold, the trap would release a burst of stored energy, strong enough to disable armor and weapons instantly. After that, it would just be a matter of finishing the fight. Ethan's eyes flicked toward the tree line beyond the doorway. "They're spreading out, trying to surround us." Kayla didn't stop working. "That's good. It means they'll all come in at once." Minutes later, the trap was armed. Kayla wiped sweat from her brow and looked toward the entrance. "They'll be here any second," she said. Ethan positioned himself behind a fallen wall. Kayla crouched behind a pile of crates. The old outpost fell into stillness again. Only the faint rustle of leaves outside told them the hunters were moving closer. The first shadow appeared in the doorway, armor glinting faintly under the moons. Another followed, then another. Kayla waited, every muscle tense, when the third stepped inside. She tapped the trigger device in her hand. The air filled with a sudden crack of light. A burst of blue energy exploded outward. The hunters cried out, their armor sparking violently. Weapons clattered to the floor as the surge knocked them to their knees. Ethan rose instantly, firing short, controlled bursts. Two hunters dropped before they could recover. Kayla leaped over the crates, her blade flashing. She struck with precision, cutting through the joints in their armor. The remaining hunters tried to retreat, but the damaged doorway slowed them. One lunged toward Kayla, and she spun aside, slicing deep into his arm. Another raised a sidearm, but Ethan shot it from his hand before he could fire. It was over in less than a minute. The smell of scorched metal and ozone filled the air. Kayla stood breathing hard, her blade dripping with dark fluid. Ethan leaned against the wall, his rifle still ready. He scanned the room, making sure no one was left standing. Then he looked. Adaran gave a faint grin. Not bad for an unplanned alliance. Kayla sheathed her blade slowly. She looked at the fallen hunters, then at Ethan. "You could have left me in the jungle that first night," she said. "Yeah," he replied, "but I didn't." Her gaze softened slightly. "And now you've saved me twice." Ethan smirked. "Don't keep count. I'm not done yet." The jungle outside had gone silent again. This time, it didn't feel like danger waiting. It felt like the world holding its breath. Kayla stepped closer to him. "I meant what I said before. You're not just my protector now." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Oh, what am I then?" Her lips curved faintly. "My partner," she said, in survival. And maybe more. He chuckled under his breath. Well, partner, what's next? Kayla glanced toward the trees. The hunters will send more. They always do. Ethan checked the last magazine in his rifle. Then we'll be ready. They stepped out into the moonlit jungle, side by side, moving toward whatever waited. Beyond the trees, neither looked back. The trap had been turned. The fight had been won. But the war between them and the hunters had only just begun.